Hello, my beautiful buds. Welcome back to my channel, Sprouts with Joy. My name is Joy, and if you like to talk about plants, you're in the right place. Every single month, I love to talk about the plants that have been really standing out to me, and well, now it's time for April favorites. I cannot believe that it's already the end of the month. Next month, May, is my birth month, so I'm turning 26. Like, what? But anyway, I'm not going to have an existential crisis. That's not on the agenda for today. Admittedly, I'm not always super excited like every single month because especially during the winter time, I feel like I tend to gravitate towards the same plants every month and I kind of have to force myself to look beyond my favorite plants. But actually, I noticed this month that I had no issues. In fact, most, if not all of these plants are plants that I don't think that I've featured on my favorites before. And if I have, it's been a while, or they're generally plants that I don't talk about very much. So I guess they're like my underdog plants. I mean, it must be the fact that it's springtime, we're in the thick of spring, and my plants are all growing and doing really, really well. Well, not all of them, but a lot of them. First up is my... I just completely blanked on what this is called. Scindapsus Pictus Silvery Ann. And okay, let's just have a moment to look at her. Okay. She's actually started trailing really nicely. She's super full on top. And I'm just like, you're beautiful, girl. For the longest time, I had a little bit of a rocky relationship with this plant. I mean, I've loved the Silvery Ann from the start. I've always loved just Scindapsus in general, but they don't always play very nicely. I feel like this species tends to put out a lot of runners, or maybe not grow as nicely as some other plants do, especially once you take them out of the greenhouse and put them into your home environment. And that was certainly the case with this plant. It wasn't growing very well for me, and then it definitely got root rot, so I had to reroot the whole thing, which I'm not proud to admit that I feel like that happens more often than I would like it to. I will say though that like after rerooting this plant, she has come back super strong. Several months ago, I actually changed where she was. I think she's like slightly offset from a south-facing window in my dining room. I wasn't necessarily expecting her to do super well because it's very indirect light there, but honestly, I feel like I kind of blinked and she started really thriving just out of the blue. I mean, honestly, like when I put her in that location just a few months ago, there was none of this trailing business. She was not looking this full on top. It just, I don't know, I feel like she's really come into herself these last few months and I'm so happy about it. Some of the more variegated leaves are a little bit more hidden. See the difference between the regular like Pictus argyrius and the Silvery Ann is that supposedly, I mean, the Silvery Ann has a little bit more of a concentration of the silver towards the tips. And with some of like the best specimens out there, there's a lot of silver on those leaves. Unfortunately, mine isn't quite as, I guess, silvery as I would prefer it to be. I mean, like this is maybe a good example of what it can be, but my one wish for this plant is that I do kind of wish that like all of the leaves looked like this. I would die, I would perish. I would love that. And I have seen quite a few Silvery Anns out there and, you know, in greenhouses and stuff that have just this stunning variegation. But, you know, a lot of these bottom leaves are a little bit more wimpy, I guess. They're pretty small and they don't have very much variegation going for them either. But I think the overall presentation of the plant, even though I prefer it to be a little bit more variegated, a little bit more silver, the overall presentation I'm so pleased with. I think it's really beautiful. So I'm trying to like not let that one little thing get in the way of how much I appreciate this plant because would I prefer for it to be a little bit more distinct from my argyrius that I already have? Yes, but I think that it's distinct enough that honestly, yeah, it's gorgeous. Like look at that one right there. I love this one leaf. It's so pretty. But yeah, there's a lot of potential here and I'm overall just so pleased that it's finally grown well for me. Wow, I feel like I talked for way too long about a single plant. I'm gonna need to speed this up because I've got quite a few plants to work through. The next plant on my favorites list is my domino peace lily or spathiphyllum. It's basically you know, like a normal peace lily, but it's more variegated. Well, not more variegated. It is variegated, unlike the standard peace lilies. It also has an interesting texture to the leaves. It's like a little bit more wrinkly, kind of, but that's just how the leaves come in, which I think is really neat. I got this plant quite a while ago. I think I got it at the same time as my philodendron mame because it was kind of a freebie plant that went along with the rest of the plants that I got then, but I'm trying to remember exactly when that was. Has it been almost 3 years? No way. There's no way. When did I start this YouTube channel? No way. Okay, I'm having a crisis today. I got this in October of 2021, which is putting us more like 2.5 years ago. I literally was like,
oh, it's been 1.5 years.
No, it's been like 2.5 years. Anyways, so I would have expected that this plant would have been a lot bigger by this point because, I mean, admittedly, I did get it as a very baby plant. But here's the thing. I liked this plant, but never enough to put it in an ideal spot in my collection. And so it was just kind of chronically neglected and chronically underwatered and chronically put in dark spaces because if you don't know, peace lilies are often kind of lauded as,
oh, this is a low light plant.
And you know, early on in my plant mom experience, I heeded a lot of that advice. And so I was like, oh, well, this can survive in low light. So let me put it in a little corner where it's getting some light, but it's not a lot. And I mean, it did survive and it did actually grow. And that's why I kept it there, but it was not thriving. But now it's offset from a south facing window. It doesn't get super direct light, but it's in my kitchen. And honestly, it's doing so much better. And generally speaking, I'm keeping up with the watering a little bit more because it's in the kitchen. It's really close to the sink. And it's really easy to notice when it starts to droop and it needs to be watered. But in particular, I wanted to point out some of these like newer leaves that are coming in. It's just been growing really nicely. And there's some really fun variegation where it's going beyond just kind of like the speckly variegation that's more standard of the plant. And it's moving into, actually almost has like some sectoral moments a little bit. I mean, it's not as crazy as, I think there's a different spathiphyllum variety that's variegated. Maybe it's the Picasso. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's the name that is a little bit more of that sectoral variegation. But I don't know, I'm seeing a lot of really nice looking variegation in this plant and I'm really, really happy with it. I'm noticing it so much more. The leaves are gradually getting bigger. It's looking a little bit more full than it ever has been. And so I don't know, I'm excited to see what happens with this plant because obviously peace lilies can get really big and bushy and there's a lot of like new leaves coming in. You can't really see it super well, but trust me, there's like multiple tiny little leaves just starting to come in and I'm really excited to see where it goes. And again, okay, I just wanted to show you this leaf one more time. Get a better look at it to do it justice. Like, do you see that? Look at that. Look at that. I didn't even know that the domino peace lily could have variegation like that. It's just looking so nice. So yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens with this plant because it's finally getting the care that it deserves. Okay, next is my Monstera siltepecana, which, oh my gosh, funnily enough, I got this at the same time as the domino peace lily, so it's also been almost 3 years. And this is also a plant that I've had to chop up in the past and reroot and all that. But to be fair, I actually purchased it with root rot initially. I mean, it literally declined right away, and so I had to rescue it. It was a little bit on the waterlogged side, so it wasn't that great. But it took a while for this plant to come back around and to fully recover. But I would say that she's made a full recovery at this point, finally. I mean, it's about time. But again, this is another one where I think that I was also underwatering it even after I kind of rerouted it, put it back together. It was a really, really tiny plant and a tiny pot, and there was just several vines, but they weren't trailing. And for the longest time, it would be growing, but then the upper leaves, like up top, would die off really, really quickly. So it would just be these scraggly vines that were kind of bare and bald, and I don't know, it just never looked that great. But I think I chopped it up again and kind of did like almost like a little makeover with it. And now, oh my gosh, it has been growing so well finally. And I've you know, been a little bit better about watering it. I'm not neglecting it. And really, it's been responding a lot. I mean, mind-blowing, right? A plant is responding to being cared for. But I also think it like figured itself out and more fully acclimated to my environment. And I will say, like, something that I really appreciate about it too is its shape. I mean, like, just look at the shape, right? And oh, another thing is I actually finally got a cash po for it. And so that's also, if you saw my last video, this is where that cash po ended up that I bought. And I think that it just looks adorable. It's looking so much nicer, even and especially with the cash po. Like, that's another reason that it's part of my favorites, is honestly the simple addition of a cash po instead of just a plastic nursery pot. And I don't know, let's just take a moment to look at it, right? For the longest time, this plant really was getting on my nerves and was not doing what I wanted it to do. But yeah, I can definitively say now that it's finally doing things, you know, and there's that subtle venation and silveriness to the leaves that I also really, really love. Oh, my heart is so happy looking at this plant. I'm just so happy it finally looks good. Oh my gosh. Okay, the next plant. This is one that I think is less of an underdog because I've always liked it, but I don't feel like I've featured it a whole lot because it has grown a little bit more on the slower side and it's a little bit smaller. And that is this Anthurium hybrid that I got from Green Hues. It's the Anthurium Doriaki crossed with Crystallinum, crossed with Luxurians. And oh my goodness, this plant is starting to shape up and look so, so beautiful. And it's especially in my favorites because this month it came out with this leaf that's still kind of hardening off. Do you see that? Oh my goodness. It's so dark and luscious, and obviously the texture that it gets from kind of its luxuriance genetics is to die for. I am so happy with how this plant is starting to look, and I got this as a tiny little baby seedling. So I grew this from seedling and it was so absolutely small. I mean, it looked like a little sprout. So honestly, the fact that I've been able to grow it to this point makes my heart so, so happy. I can't tell you how rewarding it is to get a plant to this point. And so there might be some more Anthurium seedlings in my future. I feel like, I mean, it takes a while for them to really, I mean, I think I've had this for about a year and now it's finally like at this point. But yeah, it does take a while. But oh my gosh, hang on, I'm just noticing, like, look at that sheen. Oh, it's breathtaking. It's so good. But yeah, there's something so satisfying to growing seedlings because you never really know exactly what they're gonna look like, especially if they are a hybrid from someone else's collection. Now we're finally at a place where this is like a full plant. Like, this is a very, very established plant at this point. I'm gonna need to repot it pretty soon because let's take a look at these roots. Oh my goodness. Do you see those chunky roots? And it has been drying out really, really quickly. So yeah, I definitely am gonna need to look into repotting it, which I'm like, oh, she's growing up and she's so beautiful. Maybe that'll be like my next thing because they're so small and eventually they do grow, but I don't know, maybe by the time I have a bunch of Anthurium that are this size, I'll have like a whole nother greenhouse cabinet. I don't know for sure if that's gonna happen or not, but it's sort of on my radar to maybe get another one, so I don't know. We'll see. Let me know if you have any opinions about which greenhouse cabinet I should get, because I currently have the Redsta Wide, which I love. I would definitely consider getting another one, but part of me also was like, well, what if you tried out something different? So I don't know. Let me know if you have a cabinet, and if so, which cabinet it is. If you have multiple, I don't know. If you have any pros and cons, just let me know. I'm very curious because I do kind of want to make like an Anthurium dedicated cabinet. I don't know. All right, this one's gonna be kind of quick, but this is just a little holiday cactus. I can never remember which one it is. I think it's supposed to be a Christmas cactus. This was actually, I got as a couple of cuttings as a bonus in a plant trade, and I believe that she said it was a Christmas cactus, but then I got a few comments saying that it was an Easter cactus. I don't really know. It obviously is really, really small, so it has not bloomed yet or anything for me, so I have no idea, because usually you can kind of tell depending on when it blooms, is my understanding. Again, I don't really know that much about holiday cactus, but what I do know is that this plant has grown a lot. I feel like I blinked. It never really catches my eye that much because it's so small. But oh my goodness, I got this as just a couple of little cuttings, maybe 7 months ago or something. I don't know, it was over the summer last year. And it look at it now. It's so much bigger than it was before. Obviously, it's still pretty small and unassuming, and it's not doing anything like super crazy or exciting yet. But I'm mostly just astounded at how much this grew without me really fully noticing it until this month. It caught my eye and I was like, wait a second. And honestly, maybe it's the influence from wild fern, but I am kind of wanting to get a variegated one now because those are also breathtaking. So yeah, I'm just happy about the fact that this is growing so much. And again, this is kind of like another little underdog in my collection because if I'm being honest, I never thought that I would want to get a holiday cactus. Like, they never really stood out to me. I didn't feel any desire to actually buy one, but the fact that I got one from someone else's collection that's specifically a heritage plant, like it came from a plant that has been passed down through her family for generations, like that is really special. And if I can get this to grow and, you know, really thrive, get really big, and then maybe I can send my daughter off with pieces of this plant in the future. I don't know. I feel like this is one of those plants that makes a really good heritage plant because it's so easy to take care of and it has the added element of blooms, but also the fact that this came from a plant that's been around for so long. That's just really, really cool to think about, and I hope that I can continue to keep it alive and keep it thriving. And so far it has been thriving, honestly, without too much trouble on my part, which I think is a huge win. This is my Philodendron Micans Velvet Halo is how it's said, or like Velvet Halo Mican, something like that. And let me tell you, hang on, you just need to get a good look at this. The sun's starting to come out a little bit more, but it's like still a little bit dark, so it's hard to do it justice. Like, look, just take a moment. Just take a moment, look at it. Okay, appreciate it, right? Okay, so we've been on a little bit of a journey and I am very pleased to say that we are finally in a good spot. I got it on mega sale, basically, from Botanica's off of Etsy. I bought 2, I guess, like cuttings of it. I think one of them was supposed to be rooted in soil and the other one was maybe unrooted in moss or something like that. And if I'm being completely honest, when I unboxed them, I thought that it was very beautiful, but the plants themselves were like a little bit more on the scraggly side. They were a little bit more disheveled than I would have liked them to be. They didn't feel very full, which, to be fair, like I saw them on Etsy. I kind of knew what I was getting into, but I think it was a very impulsive decision to purchase, mostly because it was so inexpensive. And the Velvet Halo Micans was never really on my like major wish list, but I think that I got it because I knew that it was rare and it was so inexpensive and I wanted to try it for myself because I saw that a lot of people really liked it. I will say, like, that's probably not the best way to go about getting plants in general, but I think that we've all probably been there. But I will say, so initially when I got it, it felt like a little bit of a letdown. It was like, okay, well, these still need time to root, so I put them in my prop boxes and they took a really long time to kind of get anywhere. And finally I decided, okay, I'm gonna put them on a moss pole because, again, they were just looking scraggly and I wanted them to have a shot at getting some like nice big leaves to grow nicely, to be a little bit more orderly. And so I did do that, and then I put it in my greenhouse cabinet and it's been just kind of sitting there chilling for a couple months. And I gotta say, this month has been its month because it just started really growing, really taking hold of the pole. I'm gonna need to add more moss to it and everything, but some of these leaves are looking so beautiful. Okay, hang on. Let me see if I can point out some specific ones. Like, just the subtle variegation on there. There's a mixture of, some of them have like a little bit of white variegation on the margins, and some leaves just have, you know, they're more two-toned where it's obviously velvety, but also has like this darker velvet, and some of them have that more, you know, Mican's characteristic trait of having like that more reddish color. So this leaf in particular is a little bit deformed. I'm hoping that it kind of comes out of its shell a little bit, but it's okay if it doesn't, because my goodness, that color, I don't know if it's really coming out on camera, but it's so reddish and beautiful. And like, look at this leaf right here that came out just before it. I'm sorry, but what? That's so pretty. This leaf alone is enough, I think, to sway my opinion on the plant because wow. And overall, it's just looking so much cleaner, so much nicer than it was before. Obviously the leaves aren't huge or anything. I don't know, maybe I needed a moment to adjust to the look of the plant because the leaves are just kind of skinnier than pretty much most other leaves that I have in my collection. It's not like that nice big plump round shape that I'm used to in other plants. But I think that this plant also needed some time to find itself, I guess, and get into a better growing rhythm because now it's putting off leaves like crazy. It took a while to get to that point because for the longest time it was putting out leaves really, really inconsistently and they didn't look that great either. And honestly, that's kind of a similar theme throughout all of these plants. I think that they all really came from humble beginnings or have had rough patches, but now they're doing really well. And honestly, I feel like that's just such a hopeful thing and really appropriate for springtime and April, this time of year. I don't know, I love it. I'm so happy about the whole mood of this month. Oh, okay, last but not least, hopefully I can beat my battery dying because I'm in the red now. Let me change my battery. I don't want it to cut out, hang on. Okay, we're back. All right, this is the last plant on my favorites list, and it is a trailing plant, so I'm trying to give you a better look of what it looks like. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. Okay. This is my Tradescantia chrysophylla, or it was actually labeled as baby bunny bellies when I purchased it, which I think is a really fun name. Me and this plant, we go back, okay? If I'm being completely honest, which I've been honest this entire video, a lot of these plants are plants that have been neglected in the past, and this one is no exception. This plant might perhaps be one of the most neglected plants in my entire collection. Admittedly, it is actually in a fairly ideal spot. Like, it gets some really nice sun, and I think that's been the one saving grace for this plant. But as far as, I don't know, fertilizing goes, I tend to forget to fertilize this plant. This is probably my most underwatered plant in my collection consistently because it's hanging in a corner and it's very out of the way to water it because I have to like remove it from this rope basket. So logistically, this just often gets passed over when it's time to water, which is unfortunate, but just the truth. And routinely, I've had to kind of prune back this plant, trim it back because it had a lot of dead vines that just, you know, they shriveled because of underwatering. And basically, yes, it has been horribly, horribly neglected. But do you know who does not look horribly, horribly neglected and who actually looks incredible right now, despite the fact that over the winter time I cut it back to like here? Yeah, literally, I cut this thing back all the way. And in the last 2 months, it has grown this much. Like, are you kidding me? It's looking unbelievably good, and I've maybe watered it twice in the last 2 months. Yeah, I'm absolutely gobsmacked when I realized, like, I just looked in the corner where it normally is, and I just was like, oh my gosh, it looks just so
nice.
And I don't understand. I've had such a back and forth relationship with this plant because there have been a lot of moments because of the neglect that it just has not looked good. I would consider getting rid of this plant like 3 or 4 times, especially because I just don't really like Tradescantia anymore. I've had some iffy moments with them as a species. Yeah, but honestly, now that I'm looking at it, I'm like, this is such a good plant. It's such a good plant and so underrated. Oh my goodness. So another really fun part to this plant is that it's super, super fuzzy. And of course, you know, it has like the green, like a very dark green color, and the back it's more purplish. So this is such, oh my gosh, I'm obsessed with this right now. Why did I not like it before? I don't know. I think I definitely did also get more swept up in the really preferring the look of philodendron and Hoya and alocasia and anthurium, like all of these other plants that just were catching my eye. So they just kept me distracted from how perfectly ordinary this plant is, and I got it for like $8, okay? This plant has been so resilient, and despite my neglect, it has grown really, really well, and it's not even really that leggy. Like in the past, it also was a little bit leggy too, which made me kind of iffy on it, but right now, no sir. It's so nice, and yeah, I can't tell you how many times I've had to like prune this back and trim it. It always comes back without fail. I feel like I am entering a period where I'm really appreciating a lot of my more common plants right now, and even tempted to like buy a few more common plants because they're easy generally, and I don't really know why. There's something refreshing about them after, I guess, chasing after rarer plants for such a long time. And obviously there's nothing wrong with plants that are more expensive or more uncommon. So yeah, I don't really know how I want to wrap up this video other than, I guess, go appreciate your plants that are maybe more on the common side, or maybe are the underdogs in your collection, because they might give back to you in dividends. Well, that's gonna be it for this video. Well, that's all I have for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you did, please, please, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. All those things are really, really helpful for my channel. And I hope that the rest of your day is great. Bye-bye!